Hello, and welcome to Progress Not Perfection. My name is Della, and I have a very special guest, Harold Puckett.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. It's such a pleasure to actually sit down and talk with you.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. I want to make you completely aware this will be televised on KCM and my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Is that good?
That's good.
All right. You ready to share your story?
Sure.
Let's get to it. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from a little farming community outside of Memphis called Mercer, Tennessee. Grew up there. Moved to East Tennessee 23 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To Knoxville?
To Gatlinburg. From Memphis to Gatlinburg. Talk about culture shock.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand the people in Gatlinburg. They couldn't understand me. No one would ride with me because, well, in Memphis, you either drive fast or you get ran over.
Yeah.
But I love East Tennessee.
Yeah. Except for the drivers. Knoxville drivers cannot drive, I think.
I think that's everywhere. Yeah.
Very true. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did your addiction begin?
So, I grew up on a farm. My mother and father were farmers. My grandparents were farmers. I grew up in a very nurturing home. But at a very early age, I never felt like I fit in. One of my earliest memories is when my parents would go out of town, I would rifle through their paperwork looking for adoption papers. I'm not adopted, but I never felt like I fit in. I'm going to say addiction was in my life way before the use of drugs because I never felt like I fit in anywhere. I never felt like I belonged. I always felt lonely, isolated, and depressed. And at an early age, I escaped through literature. We would call it going to town on Fridays, and I would go to the closest town, Jackson, Tennessee, go to the public library, and I don't know how many books I'd check out, but I can remember making 2 and 3 trips from the library to the car, just carrying all the books I could carry. And I would go home, and it was a beautiful farm with cow ponds, streams. I had horses, motorcycles, anything I wanted within reason. And instead of enjoying all that, I would shut myself in my room and escape in this book. And the more I would obsessively read these books compulsively, and the more I would read, the more I wanted to be a character in the book. And the more I wanted to be a character in the book, the more life as I knew it sucked. And then at the age of, around 13 or 14, me and 2 friends stole a 6-pack of beer from my uncle's refrigerator and went around behind the skating rink in a little town called Brownsville, Tennessee. Popped the tops on these beers. They sipped theirs. I'd watch my uncle, so I chugged mine. I had 2 immediate reactions. One, I wanted to throw up. And the other was that icy ball of fear went away. And I had this most wonderful, warm feeling. And I thought, my God, and I had found a God. And I'm going to say that's when the chemical part of the addiction started. And it progressed. I'll tell you, my drug of choice is more.
I've heard that before.
I don't name specifics because, in my opinion, I'm a firm believer in the disease of addiction, and if I tell you I like this and you like that, the disease will come in and try to separate us and tell us that we can't identify with each other, because when it isolates us, it divides and conquers.
Right.
Recovery is all about being connected, and addiction is all about being isolated. So, my drug of choice is more. Now, I had things that I preferred over others, but make no bones about it, if I didn't have my preferred chemical and I was hanging out with you and you had some stuff that I normally wouldn't do, I would want more and more and more. It was never enough.
Yeah.
One's too many and 1,000 just pisses me off.
Yeah, it's very true. I've heard that a lot. My drug of choice is more. I used to say it was methamphetamine, but thinking back, like anything I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
So what led to that decision to get the beer? You just seen people around you doing it, and
I would watch people, and back then, you had beer commercials, cigarette commercials that were all over TV, and it seemed like fun. I mean, have you ever seen a sad beer commercial? I mean, it's always that Christmas morning mentality. The lights are brighter and the paper glitters better and crinkles better and everything's better. And so, you know, at that point in life, everything sucked, and I thought, well, this will make it better. And for a brief while, it did. Until it turned.
Yep, it's always that coming down part, and it's a vicious cycle, and it just continues and it continues.
Absolutely.
I started using when I was 9, and again, people around me were, it just, you know, they had to have a cigarette or smoke a joint or have a beer or something, and I was like, well, let's try it, and it was great. But then you come down and you got to restart the whole thing.
Yeah, and addiction took me by the hand and pulled me over in a corner and whispered in my ear and said, I got you. Nobody else understands you. Your family don't understand you. Your friends don't understand you, but I got you. And I gave up everything for that chemical, that next fix, that next high. I gave it everything up. My friends left. There in the end, even my fellow using people were like, your ass is crazy. We can't deal with you.
Yeah.
So it definitely will isolate you and lie to you and tell you that it's the most wonderful thing in the world when it's not a connection, it's a disconnection from reality. And you become trapped. Or I became trapped in it.
Yeah. So did your addiction, when you said you were 13 or 14, did it continue from there?
Oh yeah, it was I started at 13 and I found recovery at the age of 25, and it was a 10-year or 12-year downward spiral into just you know, at first it was fun, and then you cross that line, and when you cross that line, there's no coming back, and it's not fun anymore. The last 2 years, year and a half of my active addiction, I was existing, not living, in this trailer in the woods, and sometimes I had electricity and sometimes I didn't. I kept the phone on because back then you didn't have cell phones and you needed the phone to call your dealer, right? Sometimes it had water, sometimes it didn't. Some nights I would sleep on top of the trailer because they were out to get me and they couldn't find me on top of the trailer. That's how out of it I was. But I would eventually, the last year and a half, I would end up at a table with a loaded gun in my mouth wanting to blow my brains out because I didn't want to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And it was just pure misery. And at that point in my life, if you gave me a tractor trailer full of drugs, oh shit, it's only a tractor trailer full. I need 3 of them.
Yeah.
And if you gave me 3, oh shit, it's only 3. I need 6 of them. Yeah. It was never enough.
It never is.
It was miserable.
Yeah. So have you ever been arrested due to your addiction?
You know, not that I'm slick, cool, and terminally hip, but no. I just got lucky. Yeah, I'll tell you a couple of, I don't normally go into war stories, but because we all know how drugs screw our lives up.
Yeah.
One quick war story. I'm running down the road one night. I'm in. I couldn't keep cars because you know when you run them into trees and other cars and buildings, they don't function very well. But I had gotten a car, and I'm running down the road, and I'm running, I don't know, 65 or 70 in a 30. Had enough drugs in the trunk of this car to send me to prison for the rest of my life. I mean, that's how smart I was. I'm literally smoking a joint and drinking a beer. And all of a sudden, and it's like 4 a.m. in the morning, and all of a sudden, I pass a state trooper. State trooper turns around, blue lights come on, I pull over, I eat the joint, I stuff the beer can under the seat. My saving grace was the guy was smoking a cigar. He could not smell the pot smoke. And he comes up to the car, he goes, what in the hell is your hurry? And I'm like, you know, I just got the car, I just did some work on it, I'm trying it out. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, this was in the 80s, not like it is now.
Yeah.
He goes, well, where are you coming from? And I work. Where are you working? And I named a place that I had worked before they fired me. And he takes my license and he looks and he goes, you're from Mercer, Tennessee, and your last name is, he goes, I think I know your father. And he named my father's name, and he goes, you know, we were duck hunting once, and it was the middle of winter, and these decoys I had got loose, and there was a little boy there, and your daddy made him swim out into the river and get those decoys and come back. I said, that was me. And he goes, really? He goes, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you go, but you take your butt down on some of those back roads. And I would have went to prison for the rest of my life. And, you know, thank you, God, for getting me out of this. I'm going right down the road, pulling over into a field, and now I got to have a drink and another joint. Because, woo. I mean, you know, it rained, I used. The sunshine, I used. I got a girlfriend, I used. I lost a girlfriend, I used. I got a job, I used. I lost a job, I used. There's a common pattern there, I used.
Yeah.
Using to live and living to use.
Yeah. So you had a lot of reservations, so to speak.
Yeah, and there toward the end, it was not fun. It was not fun.
What about now? Do you have any reservations now?
Oh, no. Absolutely none. No. I'll go back to the little hometown. My mom still lives there. And I came into recovery August the 31st, 1988. Okay? And I put together 6.5, 7 years of something. And one night in April of 95, I decided I had graduated, and I went back out and changed my clean date. I used for 4 or 5 hours. That hole opened back up. All my misery was refunded. I went back into the 12-step recovery program I'm in the next day and started over again. So I'm celebrating 28 years today.
Yes. And today is Sunday, April 30th.
Yep, it was April of 95. I don't remember the exact day, so I picked April the 30th as my new clean date, if you will.
So today is 28 years.
28 years today.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I have no reservations because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I chuckle when I'm in the meetings and people say, you know, getting high or drinking is not an option for me. You're so full of crap. It's always an option, but so is recovery.
Yeah.
But I know what that will do for me. I can't say what it'll do for you. Only you can call that. But I know what it'll do for me.
Yeah.
So why would I go there? I'll be back at that table with that gun, and this time I might actually pull the trigger. Why would I want to do that to myself?
Amen to that.
I mean, I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 2 beautiful daughters. I've got a home that's almost paid for. My employer believes in me today. I've got the family that wouldn't have anything to do with me. They come to me for advice today. I'm accepted, loved, and believed in today because I met the condition to be that person. Why would I want to throw that away on some drug that's going to absolutely make nothing better and everything worse?
Yeah. I have been through a lot, especially since I got in recovery. And there's a saying, the worst thing about getting clean is getting your feelings back.
Oh, yeah.
And the best thing about getting clean is getting your feelings
back. Yep.
Yes. And, you know, these past 2.5 years for me, wow. I don't see how I got through it clean. But reservations, I don't think I have any. You know?
Well, you know how you got through it clean? You made the process of your recovery bigger than the process of active addiction.
Yeah.
Which one's bigger in your life? Well, that's whichever one you're giving the most power. You have the choice over that.
You know, growing up around drugs and alcohol, very unstable trap houses, things like that, you know, that's why I have people come here. Like you were on my couch, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again because I'm grateful. You're in my home, you know, and this is something that I've never had before.
And you have a beautiful home, and she has a beautiful puppy over here. You can't see her, but she's amazing.
Yes, and she is, and that's
like she's napping.
But yeah, gratitude plays a big part in my recovery for sure.
Me too. Yeah.
So you had said that you were in active addiction for 12 years. So in that 12 years, when did you realize that addiction had taken a hold of you?
I think about year 2, I had an inkling because starting the party life, if you will. I mean, this was the 80s.
Yeah.
So starting out, I'm going to all these high class clubs. I'm driving by these hole in the wall places, looking at them going, into my addiction, I'm driving by these hole in the wall places going, I wonder if I can go in there or if they ban me for life.
Right.
About 2 years into, I went from alcohol to other things, and I quickly learned that if you can supply this stuff for other people, you're using free. But the thing is, monkeys can't sell bananas because the monkey's going to eat all the bananas. I was a monkey trying to sell bananas, and that never really worked out well.
Right.
And the people who, I'm going to say, got me into active drug dealing realized what was going on, and they started cutting me off.
Yeah.
And I started losing friends, and I started behaving in strange ways.
Right.
And I started isolating, and I realized, you're in trouble, buddy. But it had such a hold on me, I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So, I think the breaking point was, we were out one night driving around, and I guess I was in a blackout, and someone said, we ran out, and I said, I know where we can go re-up. And so I pull up to my drug dealer's drive-through window to get drugs, and all hell broke loose because he didn't have a drive-through window. I drove up on the porch of his house and tore the whole roof and a part of tore his whole porch and a part of the roof off. He puts a gun to my face and tells me, I ought to shoot you, and not in that nice of a way. And
yeah.
I do a lot of workshops for treatment centers, and I talk about faith.
Yeah.
And I'll ask the people in the audience, are you struggling with faith? And it never fails, half the room will raise their hand. Well, we know how to have faith. We had faith in the drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did we go to a burned out building, back alley? I mean, I went to foreign countries, okay? And I'm talking to places where tourists don't go to get drugs.
Yeah.
That's faith. Think about this. A non-addict person is not going to go to a back alley and go, here's my money, give me something.
Right.
And if you use like I did, I repeatedly did that, and sometimes it wasn't what it was supposed to be. I mean, I bought Carpet Fresh, and you go right back to the same place, and you're bitching and you're moaning, and the guy says, oh, yeah, I got the fire stuff this time, Harold, and it's $20 more. And what do you think I did?
Paid $20.
Paid $20 more. That's faith. I didn't ask the guy for a spreadsheet. I didn't ask the guy who made it. I need the ingredients. I need a money back guarantee.
Yeah.
I never met a junkie that did that. We just handed them our money, and they handed us something, and we put it in our hand, and then we internalized it in our body. That's faith. So if we have the same faith in the process of recovery that we had in that, your life is going to change tremendously for the better. But all my party buddies started going away. They were like, your ass is too crazy. Get away.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew. And August the 31st, 1988, I found myself at that table. I had a bunch of drugs on the table that didn't belong to me. And the monkey had been eating the bananas that he shouldn't be eating, right? And I owed a bunch of people money that you shouldn't owe money. And I'm sitting there with that loaded revolver trying to pull the trigger, and the voices in my head were screaming, pull the trigger, you're worthless, you're useless. Pull the trigger, do the world a favor. I don't know if you have voices in your head, but mine bring in out-of-town speakers. And they're yelling and screaming at me, and then there was this one voice that was calm and peaceful and reassuring. And what it said is, there's a better way. And I'll help you piece your life back together if you let me. And remember that, because it's going to come into play here in just a bit. And I didn't pull the trigger. That night at 8 o'clock, I went to my first 12-step recovery meeting.
Really?
Yes. And I'd like to say it got a lot better. It started the process of getting a lot better. You said something earlier about feelings. The old timers used to tell me, kid, you keep coming back, you're going to feel better. Yeah. And I thought, yeah, you're going to feel better. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't understand is you're going, like you said, you're going to feel everything better, because when you stop medicating those feelings, they come to life. So now that you put the drugs down and you're not medicating the feelings, you've got to learn how to deal with the feelings and not re-medicate them with drugs, and that's where the struggle is.
Yeah.
And for 6.5 years or so, I heard a guy share in a meeting once, if you're a maniac, if you're using drugs and you're a maniac, and you put the drugs down, but you don't do anything about the fact that you're a maniac, you've now become a more efficient maniac because you're not diluted with the drugs.
Yeah.
I had become a more efficient maniac for about 6.5 years. And I went back out and got high. I called my sponsor, who I never called. And I said, I've relapsed. And he said, no, you didn't relapse, Harold. You don't have a program. You can't relapse if you don't have a program. I chuckle when I hear people say, I'm a chronic relapser. Tell me what that is. There's no such thing. You're not a chronic relapser. You've never bought into the program.
Yeah.
And I get it because, I came around for 6.5, 7 years and I didn't, I'll do a little bit of this step and I'll call my sponsor tonight. I'm not going to call him on the weekend because I'm too busy. And yeah, I know you're telling me that most people shouldn't do that, but you don't understand I'm different. I can do that. Yeah. So it didn't work for me because I never gave it a chance.
Yeah.
The process works really well if you give it a chance, but you've got to get out of your own way.
Yeah, that was me when I first, got out of jail and went to the halfway house. It was, you got to do so many meetings, and that's what I was doing. I was just going and, getting the meeting sheet signed and all that. But I forget who it was, but somebody says you got to take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth.
Yep. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's for a reason. Yeah, they used to tell me that all the time. Yeah.
And he was a predecessor at one time. Somebody taught me about 12-step fellowship, and it just opened my eyes to everything. And this is my way of giving back.
Yeah. And listen, I want to say this: there's the 12-step process does not have a monopoly on recovery. There are all kind of ways to recover.
Absolutely.
So what I do when I go to treatment centers, I'll never forget, I went to this treatment center once and I'm standing up there and I said, I'm a member of a certain 12-step program, but I'm not here to promote that program. And this guy in the back of the room, he says, so you're going to tell us that the 12 steps are the only way to get recovery? And I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to tell you that. I have friends that found recovery in a religious organization, a church, if you will. Now that never worked for me, but it works well for them. We have a saying, get in where you fit in. And I can't tell you where you fit in. I can only tell you where I fit in.
Yeah. That's why I'm doing this. I want to show that we do recover. We recover in different ways. And just because what you do works for you doesn't mean that's going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that and understand these things.
Yeah. You can take what I give you that works for you, and then you can go over here to person B and get something from them that works, and person C, and put all that together and make it your own puzzle of recovery, if you will, and it'll work for you.
Yeah.
That's the design of this. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. So what was the breaking point that led you to recovery?
That night, at that table, when I didn't blow my brains out, well, that morning, it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. That night at 8 p.m., I went to a meeting, and I honestly thought everybody there was doing drugs because they were laughing and having fun. And at that point in my life, I'm like, how can you have fun without drugs?
Yeah.
That's how serious of a hold it had, and that's how insane I was. But there was a guy there, he said, you've been to my house, and he told me his girlfriend's name, and he said, we live next door to this couple that I hung out with a lot. He said, you spent the weekend at my house. You don't remember it because you were in a blackout. Because my thing was to black out.
Yeah.
I mean, I come to once, I started partying in Memphis and came to in Ohio 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he said, here's a book, take this book home and read it. And I took the book home and I read it, and I'm like, holy crap. They followed, because all this crap that was going on inside my head that I was never going to share with anyone, a lot of it was in that book.
Yeah.
So I started the journey of recovery. Now, it took me 6 treatment centers to get it.
So you have been to treatment before?
6 times.
6
Yeah.
times.
And it's, listen, it wasn't that the last one I went to was much better than the other ones. It's just that I was ready.
Yeah.
So in the 5th treatment center, I tried to take my life. I've had 3 out of body experiences. I shared one with you earlier. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
This one, not going to say it was bad. I'm not going to say it was beautiful because I'm at the point in my recovery where I'm not trying to label things,
Yeah.
because that limits the experience. I'm in a workshop and I come out of the workshop and literally in my mind something snapped very loudly. And now it's like I'm above myself and I'm watching myself. And they call this an out-of-body experience. I watch myself go to a cart in the hallway that's full of bath towels. And I'm watching myself. I get about 8 or 9 of these bath towels and I go back to my room and I close the door. And I'm watching myself take these bath towels and I tie them into a hangman's noose. And I crawl up on my bed, and the ceiling was these, you know, panels that you could move aside.
Yeah.
I'm moving them aside. Now I'm watching this like you would a TV show. I'm detached from it.
Yeah.
And I'm moving these panels aside, and I'm going to take this noose made out of these bath towels and tie it around something that would hold my weight, and get on the bed, put the noose around my neck, take my belt, tie my hands behind my back, swing off the bed, and end it all. And down the hallway, someone slammed the door very loudly, and it was like a slap in the face, if you will. There was another snap, and I'm back inside myself, and now I'm shaking and crying, and I'm scared to death because I'm like, I was just gonna check out. I was done. And I'll tell you, if you ever want to get someone's attention in a treatment center, you take a hangman's noose made out of bath towels, throw it over your shoulder and walk down the hallway with it, because that's what I did. People were dodging and looking, and I had a bunch of people following me. I go to the nurse's desk and I throw this thing on the table and I said, "Do you see this?" And her eyes got like this big and she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I was about to use this. I was about to hang myself here. I need some help." Yeah. And she pushed the button and these 2 guys came from out of nowhere and they sat me in a chair. My shoelaces were removed. My belt was removed. Anything on my person that I could possibly harm myself with was removed from me. And they called the facilitator of this place in, and he comes in and he goes, "I don't know what to do with you." And I felt totally hopeless and lost. And he walked away. And he comes back and he said, "I made a phone call. There's a guy in Memphis that can possibly help you." And the guy's name was Ken. His last name starts with a T. I'm not going to say his last name, even though he went on the Oprah Winfrey show and broke his own anonymity. He said, "I'm going to send you to this place." So they put me in a van. My 2 bodyguards, as I jokingly call them now, carried me to Memphis and took me to this place. And there was an exchange of the guards, if you will, because they handed me off to 2 other people. And these 2 guys took me to this room, padded room, locked me in it, and as they were shutting the door, they said, "There'll be somebody in here in just a bit to talk with you." And I'm sitting there, and I don't know how, my mental state, I was just freaked totally out. Yeah. And a few minutes later, this guy opens the door. In walks Ken. I didn't know who he was at the time. He had on the slickest suit I've ever seen in my life. His shoes, you could see yourself in them. Yeah. And he had this beautiful tie on. Now remember what I said earlier. He said to me, "There's a better way. And if you'll let me, I'll help you piece your life back together." And I'm like, "What?" But the disease instantly came in and I said, "Man, you don't know me. You got this $2,000 suit on, and I mean your shoes." I'm like, "Dude, I'm homeless. Your shoes cost probably more money than I've seen in 2 months. And you don't understand. I attempted to hang myself." And I'll never forget. He sighs and he goes, "Okay." And he takes off his jacket and he takes off his necktie and he undoes the dress shirt and he opens it like this. And he says, "Do you see the scar around my neck, young man?" And he did a complete circle. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I didn't attempt to hang myself. I did. They found me in my closet hanging by my neck. They pronounced me dead. On the way to the hospital, I came back to life so I could be here tonight to help you piece yours back together."
Wow.
And then he said, but you got to go to the roar. And he shut it. He said, I'll send someone in here in just a bit, and we'll make sure you're okay. We'll get you some food, and we'll get you some rest for the night, and I'll see you tomorrow. And he left.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and it seemed like hours, but someone finally came in, gave me something to drink, got me to a bathroom. They put me, in a room to where they might, this was the 80s. There weren't cameras everywhere then like it is now. But they put me in a room with a camera, and the camera was huge. and I'm not sleeping. I'm looking at that camera all night, and it's looking at me all night. But anyway, the next day they came and got me, and they said, Ken's going to be your therapist. And I didn't realize at the time, Ken was a psychiatrist who had retired, and he was now the facilitator of not only this place but 3 others, and he had stopped seeing patients. But now this is how big my God is. When the facilitator of this other place called that place, the nurse who was in charge just so happened to be having a conversation with Ken when she answered the phone, and he heard the conversation. And he said, bring this young man here. I think I can help him. And so I went into his office, and we had a session. And I had these parts of me that I was never going to let anyone know about. And he somehow opened all that up. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
I think it was the commonality of, okay, you went to where I wanted to go and beyond, so I can't bullshit you.
Yeah.
And as I'm getting ready to leave, he goes, young man, you got to learn to go to the roar. And I'm like, what is this go to the roar thing? What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. This is a story he tells me. Do you know what a pride of lions are? I didn't. It's a group of lions. You call a pack of wolves a pack. Mm-hmm. You call a group of cows a herd, birds or a flock. Mm-hmm. So a group of lions you call a pride. Okay, so in the pride, every lion has a job. The males are the protectors. They will fight to the death to protect that pride from an enemy. Right. The females feed the pride. They chase down the prey, they kill it, and they feed the pride. Now, in the pride, there's one leader. That's the biggest, baddest male lion in the pride. He leads the pride until he gets old. And then a younger lion steps up and says, I think I can take you out, and I'll be the leader of the pride. And they fight, and of course, the young lion wins. Right. So for a brief while, what the pride will do is they will take this old lion, and they will allow him to hide in the tall grass. And the females will run the prey toward the tall grass, and the lion will begin to roar. And the prey that the females will chasing will do one of 2 things. They'll freeze all forward momentum, or they'll turn and run right back into the jaws of death. And he said, Harold, if the prey would run past the roar, through the weeds, on the other side is freedom. He said the disease of addiction, if you will, is like that old lion. It's roaring at you. And I'll give you the tools to go past it to freedom. And we started an incredible journey. And so I constantly go to the roar. I mean, I chuckle when people say, clean time don't equal recovery. Well, okay, get you some time and then talk to me about that. Because here's what time does for me. I started a new job in December. The other day, my boss brings me in, tells me what a great job I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. You're doing good. I'm proud of you. I walk out of his office, and that voice in my head that talks to me in my own voice says, he's lying to you. He's going to fire you next week. Yeah. So, years ago, in my mind, yeah, you're right. He's going to fire. Never mind what he just told me. You're going to fire me next week. So I'm going to go ahead and do stuff to sabotage the job. Right. But today I chuckle and I go, I recognize you. And every time I've ever listened to you, it's never been healthy. Remember, recovery's connection, addiction is isolation. So instead of isolating myself with this thought, I pick up the phone and call my sponsor. Hey, just had a great conversation with my manager. As soon as I walk out, the dis-ease tries to get me uneasy and tells me, he's lying. And he goes, well, that's a lie. And I said, it is. He said, did you thank it for sharing? And see, here's where I am in my life with recovery. When my dis-ease talks to me, I go, hey, you're doing a great job. Thank you for sharing. We both know what you're supposed to do, and this is what you're supposed to do, and you're doing it. But I have a process of recovery. I call my higher power God. I have a process of recovery, and I have a God that is way bigger than you. And instead of being unhealthy, it's healthy. Instead of leading me down a path to self destruction, it leads me down a path to self healing. So, I think I'm going to go this way. Thank you for sharing, but no thanks. And when I do that, I willingly engage in my life and I participate. I work through the roar and I come out the other side. And just like Ken said, there's an incredible thing there called life and freedom.
That's amazing.
It is. It's. I mean, we've been given. Oh, gee, they say we're people that have been given a second chance. My God, I've been given third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh chances.
Yep.
I mean, because I am not a saint. I have thoughts in my head that'll make you shiver in your jeans sometimes. The other day my neighbor said something to me I didn't like, and in my head I'm putting the bottles that you fill with gasoline and you put the thing in and you light it. What's it called? Motel cocktail or something like that. Yeah, I'm throwing those through her window. But you see, I chuckle and I go, "Thanks for sharing. We're not going to do that."
Yeah.
Yeah, because number one, I don't want to kill her. Number two, I don't want to go to prison for the rest of my life. What's
Very true.
And see, I can tell you this, and I can go to a meeting and share that, and I get a chuckle because people will identify with it.
Yeah.
But if I went somewhere else and said that, get the straight jacket. Let's get this guy back in this rubber.
Him up.
Yeah, let's get this guy back in the rubber padded room. So I used to think that when the old timers said you're going to feel better, that all that would go away. And what I realize today for me is it's never going to go away. But I don't have to give it power. It can only have as much power as I give it. And today, instead of entertaining it for months and years, I'll only entertain it for a few seconds, and then I'll chuckle and go, "Hey, thanks for sharing, but we're not going to do that."
Yeah.
I got a better process. So, it's just a matter of what you want to choose on a moment-by-moment basis. Because no one promised me that when I stopped using drugs, I was going to get the most beautiful woman in the world. I was going to have, a home anywhere I wanted it. I was going to have, just money is going to be falling out of the sky for you. No one ever promised me that. They said, you know what? You're going to start to struggle in areas, kid, that you've never struggled in before. That's called growth. Because, I'm struggling with, I have Achilles tendonitis in this left heel. I'm struggling with walking today because I'm 60. I've never been 60 before. I'm struggling with daily maintenance on a home today because I own a home. I never struggled with maintenance on a home and active addiction because I didn't own one. If I had, I'd have gave it to the drug dealer.
Yeah.
So we start to get a life, we start to be productive, and we start to realize that reality means sometimes you just got to face the grind and work through it. And I chuckle when people say, "This is hard." Well, no, it's not.
It's not.
It's not hard. It's as easy or as hard as you choose to make it. And where I am in my recovery today is I'm trying to not label things as being easy or hard or good or bad because they're all learning experiences. I mean, I'm married to a beautiful woman. I didn't pick her, God did. She's amazing. I've got 3 ex-wives. And I remember whining to a sponsor about those 3 ex-wives, and he goes, "Yeah, there's one thing they've all got in common, kid, and that's you. Maybe we need to start looking at you."
Yeah.
And when I started looking at me, my whole world got better.
Yeah. So after 28 years, do you still have the urge to use?
Wow. No, I don't say it's an urge. I don't have the urge to necessarily use a drug, but occasionally, I'm going to say I'll romance that lifestyle.
Right.
Because sometimes I'll try to convince myself that I miss it. In reality, I don't. The last time I remember having an urge to use was 2008. I was living in Rhode Island. I was working for a resort company, and they had the deal was, we'll move you to Rhode Island, we'll put you to work, we'll put you at this bed and breakfast, we'll pay for the first 90 days of your lodging. And I mean, I was on a 2nd or 3rd story with a balcony that if the fish jumped out of the ocean, I got wet. It was that close to the water.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful September afternoon, and I had a great day at work. I went to the place where I was staying. I changed clothes. I got in the car, and I was going to get groceries. I pulled up in this like box-shaped strip mall, and right over here was a liquor store, and the light was flashing on and off. And I could close my eyes and see it like it was a few minutes ago. And all of a sudden, that voice said, a bottle of tequila on that balcony, watching the sun go down would be amazing. You could have a drink. A drink.
A drink.
Yeah, I never had a anything.
Yeah.
A drink. And I did what I was taught to. Thank God for the process of recovery. I did what I was taught to do. I played that tape. I said, yeah, you could have a drink. You don't even like the taste of tequila. You think it's nasty. So you're going to have that drink, and then you're going to be down here somewhere looking for something else. Because, I mean, you could drop me in the middle of the desert, and I'm going to find a place to get high if I want to.
An addict always will.
Yeah. And so I got on the phone with a guy in my network, and he said, well, let's talk about this. He said, you know, you're going to lose your dog, you're going to lose your car, you're going to lose your clothes, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose your bank account, you're going to lose everything you got. Is that what you really want? Because my head was telling me, my family at that time was in West Tennessee. You're thousands of miles away. Nobody knows. Nobody will ever know. You don't have to tell anybody. And see, that's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know to say, hey, thank you for sharing. Great job back then, because I wasn't there. I hadn't arrived at that point yet.
Right.
And so I got on the phone and I called this guy, and this is the beauty of recovery. You're never alone. I'm grocery shopping, and as I'm shopping, I'm talking to him. I'm back in the car, and I'm back at, he goes, where are you now? And I said, I'm pulling back up at the bed and breakfast. He said, are you okay? I said, yeah. He said, you didn't get that bottle? I said, nope. He said, you're going to be fine. Have a great night. That's the last time I can remember having an urge to use. And I mean, I played in a band for a while, and we played bars, and I'm not telling anyone else to do this. They all knew I was in recovery, and it was funny. I quit the band because we would play, and the bar, we would get paid $300, and their bar tab would be $5.
Right.
And they would get mad at me because I would take my part of the money. Hey guys, I had a soda.
Yeah.
I'm not paying for your bar tab.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my problem. That's on y'all.
Yeah.
I'm free from that today.
Yeah.
But I'm real about it.
Yeah.
Let me change that. I'm free from that this moment. I can get bound up in it at any second, but I don't have to act on it.
Yeah. We're all one wrong decision.
Yeah.
Away.
And the neat thing about it is I got a sponsor, I got a network of men, I got a network of sponsees that I can call. Because sometimes what's the next right thing to do? I don't know. But the beautiful thing is I can call someone and say, hey, I'm at point A and I don't know how to get to point B.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, here's what we did when we were there.
Yeah.
And this is what worked for us.
Yeah.
And if I don't like that, I can call someone else. Yeah. And now understand, the people that I'm calling, they're in the solution.
Yeah.
I hang out with people that are in the solution. I don't hang out with people that are in the mess and the chaos. Not because I'm better than them, but because I become who I hang out with.
Yeah.
And I want to be in the solution. Therefore, I hang out with people that are in the solution.
You're familiar with the term, if you sit in a barber shop long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut.
You're going to get a haircut, yeah.
Yes.
I never went to the crack house to read a newspaper.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
I picked my sponsor not because he has what I want, but because he has the same thing I have, and I watch him just like me, learning how to deal with it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's why I picked him.
So when someone says once an addict, always an addict, how does that make you feel?
I somewhat agree. Once an addict, always an addict. To me, I can't have a social drink. Well, I can, but I choose not to. Let me rephrase that. Because there's no such thing as a social drink for me. I've crossed that line. There's an old saying, once you become a pickle, you can never become a cucumber again. And I'm a pickle. But there's a world of difference in this 60-year-old guy and that 25-year-old guy who walked into that room August the 31st, 1988. There's a world of difference in those two individuals.
Yeah. So the daily life of Harold Puckett, what are some of your hobbies and your daily routine, things you got to do in recovery that you never got to do in
Oh
active
my God.
addiction?
I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So I learned to skydive clean in recovery. I learned to snow ski in recovery. I think snow skiing is probably my favorite hobby in the whole world.
Really?
Yeah, I enjoy spending time with my family. I am currently working on a book. It's a slow process, but I'm working on it. My dream, my goal someday is to become a motivational speaker. I'm working on that.
I think you'd be great at it.
I have gainful employment. In fact, one of the areas I'm struggling, I've been offered 4 jobs in the last 3 weeks, and I'm not even looking for a job.
Wow.
And I'm, humbly, thank you for that. I love to walk. My wife and I have bicycles. The last, I think, major bicycle trip, we went to Savannah, Georgia, and spent some time there riding our bicycles. I serve at the area level in the 12-step fellowship I'm in. I'm constantly doing something like this to give back.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got into recovery, the days seemed like they were 1,000 hours long, and the old timers would chuckle and say, "Just wait, kid." They always call me kid, and I hated that. Just wait, kid. There's going to be a day when there's not enough hours in the day, and it's here. There's not enough hours in the day to do what I like to do.
Yeah.
I've kind of fallen off the wagon on my workout regimen, but I can tell I'm getting in the frame of mind to get back into that. I love going to the gym and working out. Although it's 60, my idea of working out, I don't go to the gym and pile all the weights I can on anymore. I do it in moderation.
Yeah.
I'm more into doing medium to light weights today and more reps too. And I'm looking at the possibility of yoga because that's all about stretching and your mobility.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking the dog with my oldest daughter about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and we're walking through a neighborhood, and she said, "This is the perfect neighborhood to walk a dog in." I said, "I know." And she said, "You see that house right there? That's the one Josh and I want. Josh is her husband." And I said, "That's a pretty big house, kiddo." And she goes, "I know." She said, "We want you and Mom to live there with us." And I almost cried.
Oh.
Yeah. So you get a lot of things back.
Yeah.
You get your health back, you get your life back. I got my family back. I got a wife back.
And she's amazing. I've met her. So hi, wife.
God, I have a former sponsor who says that we made a list, and I put the top 10 things I would want recovery to give me, and he sealed it, and he says he still has that envelope. Someday I'm going to go over and get it and open it. I'm sure I shortchanged myself. The number one thing that I appreciate as far as recovery and what it has gave me is peace within. I spend more time alone with myself today than I've ever spent in my life, and I'm less lonely than I've ever been in my life because I'm content within. That's the number one thing this has gave me. I spent a lot of my life looking for these outside things to fill that emptiness on the inside, and nothing will ever fill that except a personal spiritual relationship with a higher power of your own. And they told me, one of my earlier sponsors, his name was Bill, and he called me boy, but I was too scared to tell him I didn't like. He said, "Boy, you're going to have to find a power greater than you, and you're going to have to make that power greater than the dis-ease of addiction, because if you do not, that dis-ease is always going to be your greatest power, and you're always going to go back to it."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget early recovery. I told this guy, I said, I don't believe in God, and I hate him. And he said, "Do you see how full of crap you are? How can you hate something you don't believe in?" And he said, let's write a paper about your God. And I did. And I grew up in a certain religious organization. And he looked at this paper and he said, yeah, if I had this God, I couldn't recover either. And my head exploded. And I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, we got to redefine your God. What do you mean redefine God? He said, well, where did you get this God from? I said, I don't know. He said, yes, you do. You got it from that religious organization that you went to as a child. You know, the one you don't like.
Yeah.
So you're praying to a deity that you don't like, and you wonder why the dis-ease is more powerful than it? He said, come on.
Yeah.
Think about this. And I'm like, and no one had ever put it to me like that before. So then he had me write a paper, what do you want your God to be? And he said, well, why can't it be that?
Yeah.
And so for the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 years in the process of recovery, I prayed to the God of his understanding, because he said, use my God until you find one. It's big enough for all of us. And this guy was amazing. I mean, he was the smartest guy in the room until I asked him to sponsor me, and then he became just irritating. He wanted me to write on the steps. He wanted me to do homework. He had me look up the meaning to every word in every step before I could write on it. And I still do that today. And I've noticed that the meanings, is my perspective of life changes, the meanings of those words change.
Yeah.
And that's key, because I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know what, and I remember I said, you want me to look up the word we? And he goes, yeah. Well, today, the definition for me, the word we means I'm willingly engaging. And me means I'm mismanaging my ego. Think about it. If you take that W and you flip it over, it becomes an M, and now you're upside down. You're out of the we and you're into me. I don't need to be into me. I need to be into the we. So I try to do everything in my life to stay in the we. I remember coming to the room one night, and I remember telling Bill, I don't have any friends here. And he goes, oh, poor pitiful baby. And he said some words that I hated at the time, but I love now. He said, boy, I got a wonderful opportunity for you. He said, you don't have a job. He said, we've got a 5:30 meeting. I want you here at 4:30. He said, we got an 8 o'clock meeting. I want you here at 7. We're going to stand you out on the stoop, and you're going to be our greeter. And all these little cute girls, this is way before Katrina came along, all these little cute girls that you're trying to mac on, I want you to shake their hands and tell them that you're my sister in recovery, I love and respect you. And all these guys that you won't give the time of day, I want you to hug them and tell them you're my brother in recovery, I love you, and I need you in my life. And I didn't want to do that. And in fact, the first day, he made me chase everybody down and redo it because I wouldn't look you in the eye. Within a matter of 2 weeks, if you weren't at the meeting, when you did show up, I'm like, hey, you hadn't been in here in 3 or 4 days. You okay? Where you? So he got me out of me and into we, and I didn't even realize it. And when I this was in Memphis, when I left Memphis to move here, the place was called the Encore Club. And there was probably, on any given night, 200 to 300 recovering people that would meet in what we call the Great Room. And then you would divide off into meetings. Well, when I left there, I was on friendly terms with everyone. And what he taught me is if you want friends, you need to be friendly.
Yeah. And that's called a network, and I can't express this enough. A network is very important in recovery.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Fast forward ahead to 2008, I'm living in Rhode Island. I'm dating my third ex-wife. We were already divorced, but we were trying to recreate the scene of the crime, if you will, insanity. She takes me to her home group, and there's like 35 rows, and she slides in on row 17, and I said, I don't do 17th row recovery, I'm sorry. At the front of the room, there was 4 or 5 tables, and there were some people sitting up there. I said, these are the guys that like are chairing the meeting, and she goes, yeah, and I said, I'm going up there. She said, you can't sit up there. I said, oh, yes, I can. So I go up, and there's a little guy in a power chair, and he had the literature, and I said, hey, are you chairing the meeting? And he goes, yeah. And I said, listen, Harold P. from Tennessee just moved here. Want to start coming to this meeting? I said, I'm here with my girlfriend. She's back there in the 17th row. I said, I don't do 17th row recovery. And he goes, man, you sit right here by me. And he sat me down, and he said, listen, I'm going to break protocol when I start the meeting. Do you mind if I tell them what you told me? And I said, no, not at all. Yeah. So he proceeds to tell the whole room, and he said, let's make Mr. Tennessee welcome. He said, "Don't y'all say howdy y'all in Tennessee?" And I said, "Well, I guess." He had the whole room on 3 say howdy y'all. 3 or 4 weeks later, I couldn't make that meeting, and she goes and she comes home and she says, "Nobody asked a thing about me. They all wanted to know where Mr. Tennessee was." And I said, "Did you slide in on the 17th row?" "Yeah." I said, "If you want friends, you got to be friendly."
Yeah.
I mean, the addiction tells me that I should slide in on that 17th row and everybody should come to my chair and tell me what a great guy I am. Life doesn't work like that. If you want something, you have to go after it.
Yeah. So the term, and I hope I say this correctly because it's a tongue twister, meeting makers make it. Do you believe that?
Well, they make a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Meetings are wonderful. You get to meetings, you get the camaraderie, you get a spiritual charge, but that's for 1 hour.
Yeah.
What are you going to do the other 23?
Very true.
If you want to make it especially in a 12-step recovery program, they've got literature, they've got suggested steps, they've got suggested traditions. They suggest that you get a sponsor. If you want to make it, get the sponsor, start writing on the steps and traditions. Whatever book that fellowship has, it's a textbook, study it. A textbook is designed to be studied. When you were using, you met at the crack house, right?
Yeah.
Or the trap house. Did you get high just by meeting there? No. You had to actually take some action and buy some drugs, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna get a little bit of recovery by just meeting there, but you're gonna have to. This is an effort result process. You got to take the effort to get the result.
Yeah.
If all I do is go to meetings, that's all I'm doing. And I did that. I did it. I'm speaking from experience. I went to the meeting. They gave me a book. I read the book. I thought, wow, I can identify. I threw the book in my closet, sock drawer, trunk of my car, something. Never read it again. Slid into the meeting, slid in beside the cute little girl, put my arm around her and said, "Hey, I'm Harold, how are you?" My sponsor said, "Don't do this." And I'm like, "You don't understand, it's me." And I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I called him 6.5 years of misery. Pure misery. Because I was a maniac in the meetings.
Yeah.
So meeting makers make a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And if that's the type of recovery you want, good for you. Better you than me.
Yeah.
For me, I never got the spiritual awakening. In a 12-step program, the 12 steps says having had a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps. That tells you right there, you're not going to get that awakening unless you work the steps.
Yeah.
And if you also work the traditions, I heard a long time ago, the steps keep me from harming myself and the traditions keep me from harming you.
Yeah.
I picked my sponsor because I watched him and his wife. They have a successful marriage. I was at the time dating my wife, and I asked him to sponsor me. He said, "I'd be honored, but why?" I said, "Because I don't know how to have a successful relationship with a woman, and it seems like you do." And he said, "It's really simple. You put the traditions in your relationship. The first tradition says our common welfare comes first. Personal recovery depends on unity."
Yeah.
Right? So our common welfare and our marriage comes first. Our personal camaraderie and happiness depends on our unity. In other words, Harold, you don't get your way all the time. Man, what an aha moment. Because sometimes I'm out in the backyard going, crap, I don't get my way. I mean, she's the oldest child, I'm the oldest child. She's very much an alpha person, so am I. We butt heads quite a bit. It's interesting in our home.
But you're happy, and that's what matters.
Very happy. My life is much better with her. Yeah.
We're down to our last 2 questions. I ask everybody the same 2 questions. And this is just in a matter of personal opinion.
Okay.
So, as a community, what do you think we could do to better help the addict that wants and seeks the help, but doesn't have the means to do so, such as no insurance, grant, money, family? What do you think we could do as a community?
Realize that addiction is a disease. people still tell me, "Oh, you could just stop if you wanted to." No, I couldn't.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't. What I have personally done is I have took a position at the area level, and it's called public relations. And as the public relations chair, I went to a workshop in Murfreesboro, Tennessee 3 weeks ago and got an amazing PowerPoint presentation. And I'm dialing in, and I'll be taking that presentation hopefully in front of the mayor, in front of hospitals, in front of maybe corporations, to show them what the specific 12-step recovery program I belong to, what they can do, what they can't do, and basically to say, hey, we're here to help.
Yeah.
So, in the old days when recovery first started, they would literally go out in the streets and bring people in. I mean, do you know how the word sponsorship started?
Mm-mm.
So back in the day when there was one fellowship,
Mm-hmm.
they would take the person who needed recovery to the hospital because they didn't have treatment centers, and they would dry out, if you will, in the hospital.
Yeah.
And when you took this person to the hospital would say, well, I guess you're sponsoring this person? Yeah. So you would take them to the hospital, you would check on them, and when it was time for them to leave the hospital, you would take them from the hospital to their first meeting. So that's how the word sponsor came about. So I think that we need to if we can sort of get back to that root of it, and just start doing what we can little by little to help the community.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I think that would make a difference.
Absolutely. And last question: if the sick and suffering addict, sorry about the cat, he's, if the sick and suffering addict were standing right here in front of you, what would your message be to them?
Oh wow, there's a better way, and if you'll allow me to, I'll help you piece your life back together. But you got to do the work. You got to go to the war.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on Progress Not Perfection, and congratulations on 28 years.
Thank you.
God willing, one day at a time. I'm going to be able to say that one day.
You will.
Yes.
You know how you get 28 years? You stay in recovery one day at a time for 28 years. It's just that simple.
Yeah. My name is Della. This is Harold Puckett, and we'll see you next time.